Hi, it's John. Welcome to the channel. Tuesday, December the 3rd. Enjoying a cup of coffee. It is just before 5 a.m. And I want to tell you about my new favorite little town, and that would be Emo, Ontario, in Northern Ontario. Now, I've mentioned them before, but in case you didn't hear about Emo, they were taken in front of the Ontario Human Rights Commission and fined $10,000 for not declaring June Pride Month and running a pride flag up a flagpole. Now, Emo is only 1,300 people, and Emo doesn't have a flagpole, okay? So this is what they've been ordered by this group, and they have to pay this group this money. Now, Harold McQuaker is the mayor, and he's been ordered to pay $5,000, and everybody on council has to take alphabet re-education as well. Mr. McQuaker says he's not doing it. He won't pay the $5,000. He's not going to be re-educated by the alphabet people either, okay? He says it's extortion. Now, as far as the city paying the $10,000, he may vote in favor of that. He does have the deciding vote, but it's a very small town. 10 grand is quite a bit of money for a town of 1,300 people. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But Mr. McQuaker says he's not going to do it. The other thing is this alphabet group says it's going to take some of the money, and they want to basically force the local library to have a drag queen story hour as well. And Mr. McQuaker says he's not going to be forced into doing that either, and he's not going to be in favor of doing that. Now, here's how I feel about Pride and Pride months and cities flying flags and having parades and spending money on this stuff. I don't think a single cent should be paid by any taxpayer for these types of events. If you've got such a righteous cause and you think people support it, raise the money yourself. And that includes having police security out, which is a taxpayer thing, or paying somebody to run a flag up a flagpole. Not a single cent to these events as far as I'm concerned. I don't care who you shtup, and I don't care what your background is or how you live your life. Just live it. Don't expect me to pay for it. Okay, moving on to the next thing. I'd like to thank Pierre Poilievre once again. Poilievre is driving the agenda with the Liberal government here in Canada. I've mentioned it many times here. I think I mentioned it in my video yesterday. Poilievre talked about housing long before the Liberals ever brought it up. In fact, Trudeau said it wasn't a federal responsibility. He's been talking about car theft. Until Poilievre started talking about car theft, Liberals wouldn't even touch it, but they are now. Here's a new one. Government spending. Poilievre says we spend too much money. He wants to cut. He says we waste too much money. Now the Liberal government is saying it wants to cut $15.8 billion by 2027, 2028 because they spend way too much money. They're looking for some savings. So thank you to Pierre Poilievre for driving the agenda in this country again. Now, I've mentioned here as well how big the government has become, and people are questioning what all these people do. Here are the numbers for you. The federal public service has swelled to around 368,000 workers, according to the government's most recent tally, up from 257,000 in 2015. And a large portion of these people, the $111,000, if I've got my mathematics correct here, they were hired in the last 5 years. So does the public service need to be so big? No. And some of the people who work for the government could be losing their jobs. And it's not because of the Liberals, it's because Pierre Poilievre is forcing them to do this. I want to talk about something a little closer to home, but you may be familiar with this if you've ever had to deal with photo radar. Alberta, when I got out here, it was stunning to me. There was photo radar everywhere. Ontario had it for a while and got rid of it. Alberta had photo radar. And for a while, I did traffic on a local radio station, and they would set up photo radar on our main drag through Calgary on Deerfoot Trail, and they'd have a couple of them in a row. There would be one in the north part of the city, and 10 minutes later, you'd be passing by another one. So if you were speeding, you'd get hit by photo radar over and over again, and you could pay a lot of money doing this. Anyway, Alberta has announced the end of photo radar. They call it a cash cow in the province. Now, here's the interesting thing about this. When I did traffic, we would get calls from people, and they would give us a tip saying there's a photo radar set up on Deerfoot Trail at Beddington. Okay, and I would go on the air and say, there's a photo radar on Deerfoot Trail by Beddington. Now, the people who want photo radar think it slows people down. And people used to call and they would yell at me on the phone. Why are you telling people where the photo radar is? All you're doing is allowing people to speed. And I would say to them, photo radar does not slow people down. But I could never get it through their heads that photo radar did not deter speeding. You'd get a picture in the mail a couple weeks later, and if you were speeding by the camera, it never slowed you down. You continued to speed. It was a cash cow, but people would never catch on. So thank God we're getting rid of photo radar in this province. It's a cash cow. And I often said this, if you want to slow people down on the highway, put one of those signs on the highway and put speed trap ahead, and everybody will slow down immediately, and it won't cost a cent. And anybody who goes too fast past that sign, down the road there'd be a speed trap, and you can pull them over. Thanks for watching. Talk to you again soon.